Hello, this is Gloomy Sunday, and once again, I will be sharing spooky stories that will send shivers down your thorny spine. Without further ado, let's begin tonight's creepy, spooky, and sometimes outlandish array of tales. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. I was with my ex-boyfriend for 6 years, during which time he lost both his mother and only brother, just a year and a half apart. Since we were dating at the time, I attended both funerals. Things eventually didn't work out between us, and we went our separate ways. I moved on, got married, and about a year into my marriage, I gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. I hadn't thought about my ex or his family in a long time, until recently. One early Saturday morning, after putting my baby back to sleep, I decided to get some more rest myself. It was only 6:30 a.m., so I thought I'd take the opportunity to nap. About 30 minutes into my sleep, although I wasn't fully asleep, I could hear my husband getting up to use the restroom. When he returned, he sat at the edge of the bed and turned on the computer. Our bedroom was small, so we often used the computer from the bed. I could hear him typing and music softly playing. I felt like I was awake, but my eyes were still closed. Then, all of a sudden, I felt someone sitting at the foot of the bed. This startled me because, aside from my husband and me, no one else was home. My husband was sitting next to me, so who could possibly be sitting at the end of the bed? Feeling a chill, I decided to peek. And there she was, my ex-boyfriend's mother, dressed in her traditional white tie shirt with a pink and green sash around her waist and a black velvet top adorned with small pink roses. Shocked, I suddenly felt a coldness sweep through the room, even though it was the middle of summer. I could feel my husband adjusting the blanket on me, but the mother still sat there, quietly looking down. After what felt like forever, she finally stood up and walked out of the bedroom. As I lay in bed, I could hear the jingling of her money belts as she walked down the hallway. As soon as she disappeared, I sat up and asked my husband if anyone else was home, even though I knew the answer. I told him what I had just experienced and later that night called my mother, who is a shaman. She initially told me it was probably just a daydream since it happened early in the morning. But when I explained that I was half awake and fully aware of my surroundings, she changed her tone and said, "Then she probably really came to visit you." I never really figured out why she came to visit me, but I'll never forget that image. How spooky. Maybe the ghost came to see her because she was there for her son when he lost both his mother and brother. Probably just to check up on her, that's all. Even though she and her ex didn't last, she still sees the sender as someone who loved her son once upon a time. Let's read the next story. I think this story happened in the early 1900s. In Indonesia, there was this mentally disabled girl, maybe in her mid to late teens. She was slow in the head, and you know how people back then were. They believed that there is evil when it came to mentally disabled people or people with leprosy. Well, anyway, her parents forced her to go out to their field and she went alone. That night, she stayed in the fields and didn't come home. Later on, when she was about to go to sleep, a tiger came and attacked her. It bit her by the neck and took off a chunk of meat, but didn't eat her all the way. Early the next morning, her parents went to the field hoping she got a lot of work done, but instead they found their mentally handicapped daughter lying dead with her head barely hanging onto her body. They did her funeral and took her body to get buried. A few days later, a young guy in their village went to the neighboring village to court some girls, and he happened to go by himself. He talked to his lover late into the night and realized it was getting late, so he headed back home. As he was walking the trail back, He saw in the distance a lady in traditional Indonesian clothes walking towards him. He could barely see her in the moonlight. Remember, this was in the early 1900s, so he doesn't have a flashlight to help him. As he got closer, he could see that the head of that person was wobbling side to side. This freaked him out, and suddenly, he remembered about the mentally disabled girl that passed away recently. He ran the other way back to his girl's village, but the dead mentally handicapped girl kept chasing him. He turned back to look and she got closer. He could see blood coming out of her neck and her head was wobbling as she chased him. He got to his girl's house and pounded on the door. Her dad came and opened the door, and he ran in. He told her dad what happened and he let him stay the night. The next day, he got home and told his parents about what happened. They did a spirit calling for him, but that was not the end of it. After that incident, almost every night the girl would come into the village to terrorize the villagers. Her head wobbling back and forth, side to side. All the villagers got really scared and they all left that village. I think remains of that village can still be found. Oh my goodness, that poor girl. Her restless spirit probably wants to avenge the hurt and abuse she suffered when she was alive. I am so sad for her and I hope that she will have peace. Let's move to the next story. This took place back in 2019 when I was 11. My grandparents live in a large Victorian-styled home on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. The building was made in the late 1800s, so it has that classic old building look to it. Me and my family go down there occasionally from our home up near Bellingham, Washington, and in early September of that year, my family decided that they wanted to pay my grandparents a visit. I was excited to see my grandparents, but not so much to go to the house. Up until that point, nothing out of the ordinary had happened in that house. The only thing it did was creep me out, especially if I was alone. The first day we were there, nothing out of the ordinary happened. My grandparents and I did our annual game of Clue, a murder mystery board game. We enjoyed dinner, and that was basically it. But little did I know when I went to sleep that night that tomorrow would be anything but ordinary. When I got up the next day, I was excited because I was a die-hard Pretty Little Liars fan, and today was going to be their first episode, second season. Outside it was warm and muggy, so in my room, which was one of the 2 rooms on the 3rd floor, I had the window open with the fan on to let all of the hot air out. Later that day, my dad came up to my room and said that he and everyone else was going to go on a walk. I acknowledged him by nodding, glued to the episode of Pretty Little Liar that was on my tablet screen. He then left and shut the door behind him. What happens next still terrifies me to this day. About 10 minutes later, I heard what I thought to be my mom yelling from downstairs. Somewhat annoyed, I stood up and turned the fan off next to the window to listen if my mom was actually calling me, or if my mind was playing tricks on me. Then I heard it again. My mom was definitely calling my name. I opened the door, frustrated that I was being disturbed from watching Pretty Little Liars, and yelled and annoyed, "Yeah?" When there was no response, I yelled down from the 3rd floor stairs again, "Yeah." Then my mom called back and said something like, "Want to show you this," or something like that. I couldn't really make out what she was saying. Annoyed, but not wanting to ignore my mom, I hurried down the stairs onto the 2nd floor. "Where are you?" I called, genuinely not knowing where she was. "Here," she said. It sounded like it was coming from the 1st floor, but something was off. Her voice sounded very muffled and weird. I played it off as me just being paranoid, so I walked down to the 1st floor, now getting a little scared. "Mom," I said. No reply. I searched almost every room, and no one was there. That only left one room, the basement. There was no way in heck I was going down there though, so I started heading back towards the stairs when all of the sudden, the basement door swung open. I yelled, spinning around. No one was there. Then, I heard footsteps walking down the basement stairs. Someone was definitely there. I then heard my mom say again, here in that same weird muffled voice. I got chills down my spine, something definitely wasn't right. I turned and ran as fast as I could up the stairs and onto the second floor. I ran across the kitchen to the narrow staircase that lead up to the third floor, then I stopped dead in my tracks, paralyzed with fear. At the top of the staircase was a shadow-like person without a face saying in my mother's voice, "Here." I screamed at the top of my lungs and practically threw myself down the stairs and out the front door. I then waited outside near the trees, glancing over my shoulder every 2 seconds before my family finally came back from their walk. When I told them what had happened, they didn't believe me at first. But seeing as I was crying and looking genuinely freaked out, they told me that they believed me. I don't know if they were telling the truth or they just wanted me to feel comforted, but either way there was no way I was sleeping in that building. After about 10 minutes of reasoning with them, I decided I would be more comfortable if I slept with my parents that night. This incident still haunts me to this day. I rarely ever sleep in a room alone in that house anymore. My insight into mimics is that it is demonic. When dealing with demons, confrontation of their existence is key. You have to directly confront them as what they are and not feed into the notion that it is potentially just a harmless spirit. I've learned there is no such thing. A way to test instantly if a spirit is harmless is by using the name of Jesus to confront them. Guaranteed, if you didn't believe it to be harmful before, you will after that. Jesus' name usually causes a manifestation. Their existence has been called out of the shadows, and their reliance on your ignorance of what they are is what allows them to stay secretly harming you. Bring them to the light. I hope you enjoyed our spooky and strange stories. Join us next time for more. Take care and boo-bye.